Hempfield Township Zoning Hearing Board order. Members present at this time are Mr. Hanson, Mr. Luce, Mr. Kyle, and myself. On your right, we have our legal counsel, Jason Hess, Township Zoning Officer, Beth Graham. We also have present this evening for order. We have one case scheduled this evening. This board will hear this case in an informal manner without strict compliance with rules of procedure used in a court trial. We ask that the applicant and any individuals interested in this particular case to step up in front of our table and explain the circumstances involved in the application. The applicant may present their case themselves through their attorneys or other representatives. Fellow board members and I, as well as our solicitor, may ask the applicant questions from time to time during the applicant's presentation or at its conclusion. All persons having an interest in this application will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, offer evidence of their own, and inform the board of their positions on the matter. In the interest of a prompt and orderly disposition of this case, however, we will ask interested people to refrain from speaking until the applicant's presentation has been completed and the board has had the opportunity to question the applicant. At the beginning of the case, people who are interested in the case should decide whether they desire to be parties to it. By being given the status of a party, that person will be entitled to receive notice of the decision in the case and will be entitled to participate in any subsequent appeal or rehearing. Individuals who are not given party status may nevertheless ask questions, present evidence, but will not receive notice of the decision and will not automatically be entitled to participate in any appeal or subsequent rehearing. If you desire to be a party, we will ask you to sign an entry of appearance form at the appropriate time. Although each party will receive a written copy of the decision, the mechanics of typing and signing the decision will take approximately 4 weeks. We ask that each person who asks a question or makes a statement first state his or her name and address for the court reporter. Lastly, in the interest of time, I will administer the oath of affirmation to the applicant and to everyone and anyone who anticipates making any statement with respect to this hearing this evening. So at this time, would you all rise, please? Under the penalties of perjury, you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. If so, please say I do. I do. Thank you. Rise to the flag, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. The case this evening has been advertised and posted in accordance with the MPC and the Sunshine Law.
It has been.
Thank you. Before we proceed with this particular case number 2476, a few logistics, so all parties know what's going on. One, since this case probably will take several meetings, the board has established that the third Thursday of each month will be set aside in order to continue this case. And as I think our solicitor has been in contact with the applicant's attorney on this issue. Second thing, logistics. This case and the hearings preceding this night will end at 11 o'clock under this board's rule known as the beard rule. So keep that in mind when we're going. There is a little leeway there at my discretion depending on witness that may be testifying at the time. With that, then I'll turn it over to Jason, our legal counsel.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to go over a few additional things since this will be going over several meetings. That under section 908 of the municipal planning code, there should be no ex parte communications with board members between anybody who's involved in this case and board members, as long as the matter is going on. And also, it's probably best if either council wants to speak to me, just let the other attorney know what it's about. Under section 908.1.2 of the NPC, it's the applicant should complete its case in chief within 100 days, as long as it has at least 7 hours during that time to do so. If there's any reason why you believe that it's going to take longer, the board can grant an extension to that, as long as the other side also has additional time to present their case. The testimony will remain open between the hearings. It's really one continuing hearing. It's not a series of hearings. So it should remain open at the end of each night. And we will announce the subsequent hearing at the conclusion of this hearing, so that to avoid having to re-advertise each subsequent hearing. If there's a reason that somebody, a witness isn't going to be available or something, it would be best if we notice that as soon as possible. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Any questions from either party?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Brian Nagel on behalf of the applicant. With respect to the 100-day rule that Mr. Hess just identified, I would think that if we're going to do a hearing the third Thursday of every month, that if it's acceptable to the township solicitor, that the parties would stipulate that 100-day rule is waived. Not to say that the applicant won't move through the case as expeditiously as possible, but we wouldn't be able to complete it, I don't believe, in that time frame. And of course, the applicant would agree to the same with respect to the township.
Township has no objection to that.
Okay. This board has no objection to that request either. It's on the record that you have stated it, so if we get down the road, we need to extend it on both sides. We can move forward and not have to worry about also the advertising and requirements to, save money from that aspect.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other sign? Okay.
I have one more thing. It was my understanding that you're going to have two witnesses this evening and an expert witness who will start testifying but will probably not finish. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I would think tonight I'll probably be finished. It's hard to predict these things, but I would think I would be finished probably by 9:30 or 10. The next witness that I have is also an expert witness, is attached for trial. I think the next date is April 18th, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
Is that it? Okay.
It was attached for trial that date, so I wouldn't be able to get him in here anyway. So I would just continue with the expert that I start tonight on April 18th, and I would expect we could finish that witness on April 18th. So that would be sort of the game plan for tonight. Two full witnesses and a third partial.
Did we ask if there's any other parties?
Not yet. So, also part of the logistics, beside in-person attendance, we're also on Zoom. So we may have people that'll come and go from there. At this point, Beth, can you read the case?
Case number 2476, Colbrook Associates Venture LLC filed a substantive validity challenge pursuant to section 916.1A1 of the PA Municipalities Planning Code relating to the property at 10 Midway, parcel number 2905165400000, located in the medium density residential zone. Claiming the ordinance unlawfully excludes high-density multifamily dwellings.
Thank you. The applicant, in this case, Colbrook Associates Venture LLC, presume they are here under counsel.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience or on Zoom that wants to be a party to this case? Seeing them. Begin then with the applicant. Oh, awesome. Please, when you use the mics, you might have to hold them a little closer to you if you're, it isn't like so that our court reporter can get that. We will all be taking board minutes, but she is taking the official minutes. And but she needs to hear them. I want everybody else to be able to hear it.
And Mr. Chairman, does the members of the board have any objection if I remain seated while I'm making presentation or questioning witnesses?
No, you make yourself as comfortable as you want.
Thank you.
Just don't fall asleep.
I'll do my best.
Okay. So, with that, Mr. Nagel, I presume you're going to represent the client.
Yes, I am.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. Again, Brian Nagel on behalf of the applicant. I'll just make a brief introduction and then I'll call my first witness. The summary of the case has already been stated by Ms. Graham. The subject property that's owned by my client is located in East Hempfield Township's RM, medium residential zoning district. It's comprised of one parcel containing 63.321 acres. That property is located in East Hempfield Township's urban growth area as designated on the township's comprehensive plan. A portion of the property consisting of about 35.7 acres is improved with 342 garden-style multifamily units known as Colebrook Apartments. That was approved by the township in 1971 as part of a planned 713-unit multifamily complex. At the time of that approval of that plan, the property was located in the township's high-density residential district, which permitted a density of up to 12 multifamily dwelling units per acre. The township no longer maintains a high-density zoning district. In 1994, the township amended its zoning ordinance to reduce the density of multifamily from 12 units per acre to 5 units per acre. That reduction by that change in the ordinance reduced the permissible density of the subject property, which I'll refer to commonly throughout the course of this hearing as the property, the subject property, or the Colebrook property, using those terms interchangeably generally. The change limited the permissible density of 317 multifamily units, which actually is 33 units, if you do the math, fewer than what's constructed today and existing out at the site. And it's 396 units less than were approved by the 1971 or as part of the 1971 plan. Those regulations were further codified in the East Hempfield Township zoning ordinance of 2014. As a consequence of the reduction in the allowable density at this location, The remaining 27.6 acres of the Colebrook property remains unimproved and cannot be developed or subdivided. Further to that point, in about March of 2021, the township zoning officer determined that Colebrook's, at the time, proposed expansion would increase the property's existing dimensional nonconformity for density. In order to do that, you would require a variance. Around that same time, my client had approached the township to work on a reasonable plan to develop the open 27 acres. And while various options were considered acceptable by township staff, it was made clear to my client that their desired plan, a 308 unit development on that open 27 acres, would be opposed by the township. Instead, at that time, my client was advised to pursue a variance plan that it wasn't sure it could make work, frankly, but it did pursue that plan. And after a hearing on that variance application, this board issued a written decision in April of 2022 denying Colebrook's variance application, in which it concluded that the density at the property of 5.4 dwelling units per acre predated the current zoning density limits and constituted a valid legal dimensional nonconformity under section 270-6.4 of the township's zoning ordinance. I think this board was likely correct in its decision in that case, because the zoning problem here presented is not one that can be easily solved through a variance. The problem ultimately goes back to the decisions that were made by the township that resulted in both the sterilization of my client's property and a legally problematic zoning ordinance. There remains more than adequate land on the open 27 acres of Colebrook's property to physically construct additional multifamily units. The ordinance also creates other legal problems, which we'll talk about as we proceed with the case, and which were identified in the application, in that it results in exclusionary zoning, and it also violates the Federal Fair Housing Act, among other things. As I mentioned earlier, we have a number of witnesses to present this evening. I have three: Aaron Polinsky as the owner's representative, Gwen Baer, the regional manager of the Colebrook multifamily community, and Dr. Timothy Cassidy, who is our expert in land planning, architecture, and the preparation of and revision of zoning ordinances, among other things. So with that, I'll call my first witness unless there's any questions. Any questions?
Mr. Model.
Yes, sir.
I understand what your application's about here. Well, why not go after this as a use not provided instead?
Well, that's an interesting question. And maybe that's something that could be explored ultimately, but the multifamily use in the ordinance on its face is permitted by the zoning ordinance.
But a high density is not. And that the state does recognize high density as a zoning district.
Yeah, well, the application includes a claim for exclusionary zoning, and that would include what you're articulating.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Anyone in the audience have questions? What he expressed? Seeing none, please continue.
Thank you, sir. The applicant will call its first witness, Aaron Polinsky. Yeah, you can go right up there. And as I go through the exhibits with the witnesses tonight, Ms. Graham has each of the exhibits on a flash drive and is going to be able to put them on the screen. And then my colleague, Mr. McEwen, will bring a paper copy up as we go for everybody here.
One thing, if you point to anything you didn't point on the screen, please use that screen.
I've already talked to the witnesses about it before we started. I did bring up a pointer that works on that screen, and that's what they'll be doing. You might as well put it up there. And then could you slide over a little bit so I could see the witness? Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Polinsky. Could you state your full name and by whom you're employed, please?
It's Svi, Aaron Polinsky, and JCM Lou.
And just,
Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Yeah. A little closer.
does it appear to be on?
Closer to it.
Is it on?
Yeah. And also just, it's best if you could just keep your voice up a little bit
Okay.
so everybody can hear you both ways. Thank you.
Repeat the answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Svi, Aaron Polinsky, and JCM Living is the answer.
And why don't you spell your last name for the record, please?
POLINSKY.
And what is the business of JCM?
Real estate operations.
And could you describe the history of JCM?
Yes. The business is about 50 years old. It's a family business. It's in the business of acquiring and operating real estate property in the northeast of the United States.
What is the relationship between JCM Living and the applicant Colebrook Associates Venture LLC?
JCM Living is the management company for the portfolio properties. Colebrook Associates Venture LLC is the owner entity of their specific sites.
What is your position in particular with JCM?
I focus on ground up development projects throughout the portfolio.
And how long have you worked for the company?
About 10 years now.
Where is your office located?
In Brooklyn, New York.
Could you please tell the board what your background is?
Yes, actually, I was born in Maryland. Actually, my father was in school here, but I grew up in New York. I followed his footsteps back to Maryland, to Johns Hopkins University, with a degree in finance, as well as Mary Israel Rabbinical College, where I received a degree in Talmudic law. I then started to work for a private equity firm based in Manhattan, New York. From there, I started with the JCM family with the ground up development projects.
And where is JCM presently engaged in business?
JCM manages part of a group of entities that own and operate properties in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Maryland.
And how long has JCM been in business?
More than 50 years.
Are you here this evening as the owner representative of the applicant before this board, Colebrook Associates Venture LLC?
Yes,
Do you have authority to sign documents on behalf of the applicant?
yes.
Is that something you do on a regular basis?
Our business, as a family businesses, closely discuss everything, make decisions together. But yes, the answer is yes.
In addition to your signing authority, has the applicant also authorized you specifically to testify on its behalf in this matter?
Yes.
I'm going to show you an exhibit marked A1 for identification. Give you a copy. Could you identify the exhibit marked A1, please?
Yes, this is a document that was issued authorizing me to present or speak on behalf of the applicant today.
How long has Colebrook Associates Ventures or its predecessor, as the case may be, owned the Colebrook community?
Since February 27th, 1989.
And where's the Colebrook community located?
8 Welsh Drive. There are 2 entrances, Tenby Way and on Welsh Drive in East Hempfield Township.
So when you're saying there's 2 entrances, that you're saying that that community has 2 access points from public roads, is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a document marked A2 for identification. Off the record for a moment, please, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Matt, can you please give the witness the exhibit before you go to the board, so that way we can move a little bit more expeditiously? Thank you. The document marked A2 for identification. Are you able to identify what that is?
This is the deed. Use of this property.
And I'm going to show you another document marked A3 for identification. That's a confirmatory deed, correct?
Right. This is a confirmatory deed when the property was transferred from a general partnership into a limited liability company in 2008.
In what year?
2018.
Okay, thank you. Does the applicant maintain a regional property manager who oversees the Colebrook multifamily complex?
Yes, we have regional management as well as local on-site management for our properties.
And who would that be?
Gwen Bear.
And is Ms. Bear employed by JCM Management?
Yes.
And do you maintain a management office and or a rental office at the Colebrook facility?
Yes.
Both?
Well,
When,
One second,
yes, sir.
you gave me 2 copies, I don't know if you need that one back. Sorry, maybe.
No problem. No problem, Mr. Chairman.
What? Oh, we all got 2.
it's a confirmatory deed.
Do you need these other 2? Again, sorry, Mr. Earl.
No problem. When Colebrook acquired the property, Mr. Polinsky, was Colebrook complex, was the Colebrook complex already there and constructed?
Yes. The existing apartments were constructed. The original approval had 738 units, so only a little bit less than half of what was approved on the site was constructed at the time.
And how many multifamily units exist in that complex today?
342.
I'm going to show you an exhibit marked A4 for identification, which I'll give you a little preview as an aerial photo. And you have a pointer there if you like to use it. It's the top button. You don't have to. But could you just identify for the board what this aerial shows?
This is the Colebrook property.
And on the exhibit itself, would the Colebrook property be the area that's kind of lightly shaded in blue and outlined in a darker blue?
Yes.
So that's the 63 plus acres that we started talking about.
Yes.
And in this photo, is it fair to say you can see all of the apartments and most of the drive aisles and parking areas out at the site?
Yes.
And do you also see the open 27 acres that I referred to earlier?
Yes,
And is that the field looking area that's sort of to the top left of the blue area of the exhibit as you're looking at it?
yes, it's the empty piece of land, and it's nothing on it at the top of the blue outline.
And if you know, is the developed portion of the property takes up a little over 35 acres or almost 36 acres, is that accurate?
Yes,
And what is the open area, the 27 acres that I asked you about used for?
it's in order to carry or be able to try to do something with it. We have a temporary tenant on there doing some farming, but it's really not used for anything. It's an empty piece of land. It's really not able to be used for anything.
Is that consistent with the intended use when Colebrook acquired the property?
No, this is the site. This is the exact location for the remaining 371 units that were approved as part of the original plans.
I mentioned in the introduction that planned expansion that you just referred to dates back to the early 70s, 1971 or 1972. Is that true?
Yes.
I'm going to show you an exhibit marked A5 for identification. Is it fair to say that this depicts the basis for the plan that the township had approved in the early 70s for the 713 units that you mentioned?
I'm going to object. I don't think this witness is qualified to testify about township records. He's been employed by this applicant for 10 years. I don't think you've established a basis for him to start testifying as to this plan and the layout.
Yeah, I'm not having the witness testify about the layout of the plan. Just asking if this plan forms the basis of the approval that was obtained previously. The fact that the witness has only worked for the applicant for 10 years, I could lay some foundation if you'd like, that he has knowledge of the history.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate for him to lay some foundation.
Why don't we do that one?
Sure. Mr. Polinsky, in the 10 years that you've worked for the company, have you acquired an in-depth knowledge about the history of the subject property?
Yes, this plan was in the file that we have from the acquisition of this property in our offices. It does predate, before I was born, frankly, but it does show very clearly the site as it is today. The 10-way circle, which I can show you using this. There's a sort of a cul-de-sac area right here, which is in existence today. And it was built as the entrance from Tenby Way with this circle to be able to provide access for this, which is the 27 acres we were just discussing in the previous slide.
When your company acquired the subject property in 1989, is this one of the due diligence items that your company reviewed and considered when evaluating the property and the value of the property?
Okay, same objection again. I don't think he's laid a foundation that he would have knowledge to testify as to those facts.
I think the witness said that, okay, I can continue.
Just make sure you picked up. Cheryl.
I didn't hear me.
Repeat your.
Sure. I have the same objection to this line of questioning. He has not established the foundation that this witness has any knowledge, direct or indirect, as to the basis for the approval, what was in the plan. I think he needs to lay more foundation. His only testimony was this plan was in the file, but nothing has been established as to what was, considered as part of the plan, what the plan for development was. He hasn't testified that he has knowledge of those facts or that he's reviewed the file to obtain those facts.
So I would say that nobody in this room has that knowledge. I don't think I think he's given his opinion, which I think everybody's entitled to, of what the original plan was.
Mr. Nagle, can you respond to council's, objection before?
Certainly. The witness isn't testifying about the plan to establish anything having to do with its layout. Just the fact that it exists, that it's something that they had in their file and relied on when they purchased the property, and that it shows the developable capacity of the property according to the plan at the time that it was created.
I think the problem becomes, what is his foundation for the knowledge that this was what was relied upon by the owner when they purchased the property in 1989?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Counselor?
Sure. What information or knowledge does this witness have to establish that this plan is something that the owner relied upon when purchasing the property?
Why don't I ask the witness that question? And then maybe we can cure it.
Please.
Can you answer the question that the township solicitor asked?
The business is a family business. As I stated, it's 50 plus years old business started by the same person who leads it today and family. And all the owners, and we all, as stated previously, discussed every item that we reviewing that we approached. And this was discussed with everybody that was there at that time.
At the time of the purchase?
Everybody that was there and everybody that was back responsible.
And was it discussed subsequent to the purchase after you, with the owner and with the other people at your company, after you started in the employ of the company?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you.
On the objection, I'll overrule there. Excuse me. Yeah, we'll go off the record for a second. Back on the record. I will go over objections to you.
Thank you, sir. After your company acquired the property in 1999, as far as you understand, in your role as
1989.
what did I say? Sorry, thank you. After your company acquired the property in 1989, is it your understanding that your company's goal was to expand the Colebrook Apartments into the 27 acres that we discussed earlier?
Yes.
And similarly, in your knowledge of the company's portfolio, was the zoning for the property at the time that Colebrook purchased it permissible of the density that we've talked about as shown in this plan?
Yes, it was at the time, as it predates the 1994 ordinance.
Do you know if the township zoning ordinance was amended after that time to reduce the density?
Yes, after the purchase. As you said, you used the word several believe that's the best word to use, where the value that was purchased in 1889 was essentially removed as the land was part of that ordinance.
And subsequent to that time, did you approach, and when I say you, I mean your company, the township about developing the open 27 acres?
We did in 2020.
And what were you seeking to build at that time?
At that time, before we approached the township, we had brought on board qualified regional engineering firm, as well as a qualified regional architect and a team of professionals that we worked with the cities, the infrastructure available for the site. And we put together a plan less than what was approved at the time of the purchase of the previous approval in 1971. The plan was discussed, we thought it was the right way to go, and we, based on the local infrastructure and the capacity and the traffic patterns and everything else that went into that calculation, and we came to an agreement on a plan, and we started the discussions with the township.
And do you recall how many units were on that plan?
Yes, it was 308. 308.
You probably can't hear it, but if you have to talk close to the mic, but not close enough that it creates air on the microphone, or we have trouble hearing what you're saying.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to show you a document marked A6 for identification. Yes, sir.
You mind if I ask a question?
No.
You said you purchased the property from the agency, right?
Yes. It's in.
The zoning ordinance was changed in 1994 down to 5. Was there any attempt by JCM to expand the property between 1989 and 1990?
I don't believe so.
Could you identify what happened?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Just waiting for that. Can you identify A6?
Yeah, this is, yes, this is the plan that we had worked on for the site.
This was the plan that was presented to us.
We'll talk about that, if that's okay, Mr. Hanson. We'll get there. Okay, thank you. So this is what you thought at the time was an appropriate development of the 27 acres?
Yes.
And you approached the township with this plan?
We had several discussions with the township about this plan, yes.
And was the township receptive to this plan?
No.
After that, what did you do?
After that, we reconvened with our professionals. We reviewed our options. We actually did.
And did you present that to the township?
So that plan we did present to the township as well. And it was the subject of a dimensional variance application.
I'm going to show you an exhibit marked A7 for identification. The plan that you presented subsequent, how many units did that have? Why don't you identify the document on the screen first?
This is the denial that we received for our dimensional variance application.
And when you say denial, you mean the decision of this zoning hearing board on the variance application?
Yes,
And how many units were you pursuing in the context of the variance application?
196.
And this decision is from April of 2022, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson, does that answer your question?
Yes.
You're welcome. In the decision, the board talked about the density limitation of 5 dwelling units per acre in the township, and the fact that your property is already at approximately 5.4 dwelling units per acre, correct?
Yes.
Is the 5 unit per acre density that's referenced in A7 as applied to your property a rational and realistic development for the property?
No.
In your role as the ground up developer for Colebrook and or JCM, as the case may be, are you experienced in ground up multifamily development?
Yes.
In order to make that type of development work in your business, where do you typically need to be?
In order to make this project work in this township, in this general region, approximately 12 units per acre makes the most sense. 11 would also make sense. And I can get into an explanation for why, but 5 does not make sense.
So what is your goal in pursuing the application that's before the board this evening?
My goal is twofold. One for myself, one as a witness, part of the position that I'm in as a witness for the applicant, and the applicant's goal, to goals that are part of the same general package, but I'll explain the goals separately. My goal in sitting here and coming here today from New York to discuss this and answer any questions is sincerely to explain, to show, to answer questions, showing our altruistic intention for this site, for this land, using local, regional, contextualized plans, people, such a project, to explain the kind of management company that we are, that the money we put into properties, the long-term ownership that we have with our properties, the way that we manage our properties, the tenant comes first mentality that we have. And those things are very, very important to us. And it's very important to me that that becomes clear in this room as my own personal objective. As the applicant, our objective here today is to be able to make business sense out of this vacant land, which once had a real plan and now does not.
Mr. Hanson?
Mr. Nutt, I'd be interested in hearing his reasoning why 11 or 12 would work and why 5 won't. Are you going to get to that later? Or?
I'm going to say I'm finished asking this witness questions, and you're free to ask him any of those questions that you like, as far as I'm concerned.
So please explain to this board why 11 or 12 will work, but 10 won't and 5 won't. What's the reason?
The answer is one simple answer. I'll explain it this way. In order to build a community, which is what we do, not just putting up structures and walking away, but creating a community, and in this case, it would be expanding a community. It requires a tremendous amount of effort, resources, money, time, and a tremendous output from us from whoever would be creating that community. Those efforts, if there were a stabilized value at the end of the day of 5 units per acre, limiting the revenue of a stabilized model to 5 units per acre, would not justify the output of resources and thought and people that we require. 12 units per acre and the value that will be created with such a revenue model of a stabilized project would make sense. 11 units would make sense, but conceptually limiting yourself, limiting ourselves, but with a very similar amount of resource output is the reason why it would not make sense.
So where is the cutoff? You're saying 5 won't work, 11 or 12 will work. Will 8 work? Will 9 work? Will 7 work? Where do you maximize your ROI at?
So based on, it's also based on the amount of dollars we can charge for rent, and our business model is to create market housing, which is affordable for our tenants, so that we maintain tenants that pay rent. And because of that, we can't charge, well, we don't charge extraordinary amounts of money for rent. We're not building extra luxurious housing. And so if we had 5 units per acre to make it work, we would have to charge a little bit more for rent. But when I say this location in this region and the market rents that we would want to be charging based on our model and based on our calculations, that's where we get that number, about 10, 11, 12. But 8 is definitely too low, 5 is certainly too low.
Mr. Hanson, would you mind if I asked a follow-up question to clarify something in that answer? You use the term affordable, and I assume you mean rent that your customers can afford, and not the term affordable as it might be meant in or used in some contexts as affordable housing, which would be subsidized housing.
Absolutely. While we understand the business model of affordable housing and it's an important one in this country, we are not in the business of affordable housing.
Okay, normally we have the board and then open it up to the questions, but since this is not a typical hearing for variance or special exception, I'm going to let township council, ask the questions ahead of time. So Ms. Piper, if you have questions,
I do.
for this witness,
Yes.
please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Polinsky. A couple of questions to follow up on your testimony. You indicated that at the time this property was purchased, it was the owners relied upon this plan that had been approved in 1971. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But despite the purchase in 1989, no efforts were taken by the owner to come into the township with the plan until 32 years later. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So no efforts were taken by the owner between 1989 when the property was purchased and 1994 when the township changed the zoning ordinance, correct?
So, correct.
Okay.
Saying, if I can, we don't have record of any memorandum to us about the ordinance, and it was not clear to anybody in the office that the ordinance was passed.
Okay, so it would be true then that no owner representative came to any hearing at the township at the time the zoning ordinance was being amended. Okay. Okay. Now, I want to turn to Exhibit A4, which is the aerial map. Can we put that back up, please? And I just want to orient ourselves. If we look at the top of the map, am I correct? That's north?
Yes.
Okay. So you've testified as to there being an empty parcel or an empty area of land on this plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would that be located in the northwest portion of this parcel?
Yes.
Okay.
believe we're done with the same thing. If you want to show what we do.
Well, if you want to use your pointer, perhaps you could again point out for us the empty piece of land with nothing on it.
Objection. Counselor, just to clarify, you asked the witness that you stated that he testified that there's an empty parcel of land. And I think he said there was an open piece of land that's part of the property.
Let me correct myself. He did in fact say an empty piece of land with nothing on it.
Thank you.
Those were his words.
Thank you.
Okay. So could you point out to us the empty piece of land? Okay. Are you familiar with the term crop farming?
Yes,
Okay. Would you agree with me that that empty piece of land is actually being crop farmed currently?
it seems like from this picture, whenever the helicopter flew over and took the picture, that it was a farm that was there today, and it looked to me like a big open field with grass.
Okay. And would you agree with me that during the time of ownership, that this piece of the property has been under active farming?
We have a temporary tenant there to help carry costs for the land.
Okay. And how long has the owner had a temporary tenant on that section of the property?
I believe it's several years. I have to check the exact amount.
Would it be 32 years?
I don't think it's 32 years, but I would think so.
And if we look at the adjoining properties to the north and the west and the southwest, would you agree with me that those areas, as represented on Exhibit A4, also appear to be farmed based on this map?
Yes, though I would point that's the differences with those parcels, 2 hours.
Well, looking at the map, would you agree with me that they're not developed with apartments or high-density residential units?
They don't have high-density residential units, and they don't have streets that go directly to them either.
Okay. You gave some testimony on Exhibit A6, and we can put that back up, please. And I just want to clarify, I believe your testimony was this was a first plan, Exhibit A6, that was developed and presented to the township. Okay. And I just want to clarify, when you say it was presented to the township, it was presented to township staff, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And at no point in time were there any discussions with the Board of Supervisors about this plan depicted in A6?
We had a council, Barney Snyder, in the firm. I believe they had several conversations with different departments within the township. I cannot confirm what you said.
But you didn't have any hearings before the Board of Supervisors, and you didn't submit a land development plan, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And when you gave your testimony that the township was not receptive to this plan, you were not referring to the Township Board of Supervisors, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And were you personally present for any of those discussions when township staff or other township personnel may have given the indication they were not receptive to this plan?
I personally was not. I believe that has some of the representatives we have here tonight were.
Okay. So you, as you sit here today, don't have firsthand knowledge as to what the concerns were from township staff about this plan?
Okay.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that this Exhibit A6 is actually what was presented to this zoning hearing board when you had your zoning application for dimensional variance?
No, that was not.
It was not the plan. Okay. Can you explain to us, because your counsel has not introduced the plan, can you explain to us how A6 differed from the plan that was actually presented to the zoning hearing board?
The short answer is the difference in the amount of the units. One was 196, the other one was 380.
Okay, so the one that was presented to the zoning hearing board was the higher or the lower number?
196 was the subject of the dimensional variance.
Can I ask something, because the plan I'm seeing is A6, that I think you said was the 1-2 that was presented to the township, but not the zoning board, says that there's 342 existing dwelling units and 538 proposed. That's a difference of 196. So it seems like this A6 also was proposing 196 dwelling units.
Yes, well, I was looking at this one. This is zoomed in, this is a zoomed in version of it. The plan that was proposed to the township was 196 units.
Okay, so let me just clarify. I appreciate Attorney Huff's comments because I will tell you that the exhibit I have from the zoning hearing is the exact same copy of Exhibit A6. So I just want to clarify. Would you agree that Exhibit A6 is the plan that was presented to the zoning hearing board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So I'm following you in that question. So now A6, which was presented to township staff, was also the same diagram that was submitted to this board under the variance.
I'm not sure. I want to ask a few more questions. I think all we've established so far is A6 was what was presented to you gentlemen previously during the dimensional variance request.
So I'm clear.
Okay. Sure. So Mr. Polinsky, I just want to address Mr. Hurt's question. Is there another plan that was presented to township staff other than Exhibit A6? If you know.
No, as stated, the 196 unit plan, which is A6, and which is what you're holding in your hand, was the subject of the dimensional variance and was part of that presentation. Previous to that, there was a plan of 308 units discussed with several different departments. I was and there in the meeting, but the 308 units was discussed with several different departments through bonus there previous to this.
Okay. So those discussions took place with your counsel. You have no independent knowledge of those discussions.
Well, I do. You said first thing, when I was very involved with the council before and after the meetings and generating that money for 308 units.
Okay. Was the plan actually prepared and presented to staff?
Yes.
Okay, but you have not presented that here tonight as an exhibit.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, just so we're all on the same page, but you're saying that the original plan you brought staff was for 308.
Yes.
Tell you go back to testimony in the court report, plan they presented to us was for 100.
Correct.
Yeah, the applicant will stipulate that that's the A6 is the 196 unit plan that was presented as part of the variance application. And that the 308 unit plan that Mr. Polinsky testified about has not been marked in this proceeding at this point in time.
They were, to clarify, they were part of local discussions. They were part of the previous to this.
Okay. All right. Thank you. You've testified that this is going to be market rate housing. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Can you explain to the board what you mean by market rate housing?
Yes. Is based on data that we obtain from neighboring projects, neighboring buildings, market rentals that are on the market forms, based on the numbers that are obtained all of those components of our study. We generate averages and we use those to check for.
Now, are your units that currently exist at the property, are those what we'll call market rate housing apartments?
Yes.
Okay. And strike that. Wait, can I just have one moment?
Standing at ease for a second.
Yeah, where should I get this?
You're back on the record, please.
Okay, I just have a couple more questions. You've testified, Mr. Polinsky, to the economic benefit to the owner of having higher density on this property. Are there any other benefits to the owner from having higher density on this property?
Additional amenities within the structures that could potentially benefit from our existing tenants who've been with us for a long time. And that would be an added benefit. I'm sure there are others. There are some others, yes.
Okay. Are there any other additional benefits to the township as a result of having higher density on this property?
Certainly. There's many new commercial facilities, economic drivers that would benefit from additional residences, market rate residences, as discussed.
Okay, can you identify those?
Well, I see, just the point one, is additional stores opening up, additional exciting exciting development that's here. That's the way here. Stores, retail facilities, is additional customers, additional sales tax, generated additional benefits to the open market.
Are you intending to have any retail operations within this property?
No.
Ms. Piper, can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
You're saying this would benefit the community by increased sales. Would it also benefit the township by increased tax revenue?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions for this witness.
Gentlemen, any questions for this witness?
I have one.
Mr.
Beth, can you put A4 back up, please? Mr. Polinsky, of the 63 acres of this parcel, is there any part of this parcel that is unbuildable? For example, in floodplain like that?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I will clarify the portion of the site that is above our design, which you have in front of you as it's
I'm talking about the whole 63 acres.
I don't know whether
You can't build it floodplain area.
in the northernmost portion by the trees.
In the southern portion.
Oh, certainly there, but yes, the answer is yes. In the area that is part of the 27 acres of vacant land, which is in the north part of the city, in the blue, as discussed, there is no area like that.
No, but I'm talking the whole parcel itself.
Yes.
Unbuildable.
100%. Yes.
We know what that acreage is.
Well, Mr. Hanson, if I may, we'll have a civil engineer testifying who will be able to answer any of those questions.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other questions, gentlemen? Jason, questions of the witness?
I don't have.
Okay, anyone in the audience have questions of this witness?
Mr. Herr, I do have one more question. Will indulge me. Thank you. Going back to A6, which is the plan presented to the zoning hearing board. Would you agree with me that the density you were proposing at that time was 8.5 units per acre?
Yes, and if I may explain.
No, I'm just asking my question. It's 8.5, but today you're asking for 11 or 12. You're suggesting 11 or 12.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
With that, Mr. Nagel,
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just have three redirect questions, please.
please.
Thank you. Could we please go back to A4? Mr. Polinsky, if I direct your attention to A4, the satellite image, and it has the 27 acre area that we referred to, and I believe you testified that generally up on the plan is north. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So if I learned the trick my mom taught me when I was little, to the left would be west. Is that right?
Yes.
And so to the west, there's a developed property, part of which is hiding behind the Colebrook Associate Venture label that's on this exhibit. Do you know what that is?
No, I can't see it.
You can see part of a developed property on if you look at the blue line that runs sort of southwest to northwest. If you go to the left of that, do you see a partially developed property?
Isn't the school?
Okay, no. That's not what I'm asking about. I'll ask another witness. That's okay. I'll move on. The township solicitor asked you about the benefits of multifamily development to the township. Is it fair to say, based on your prior testimony, that in your opinion, one of the benefits of additional multifamily development at this location would be dwelling units that are affordable to people?
Affordable to people that they can afford to pay rent, yes.
Thank you. With respect to A6, the township solicitor identified that the density on that plan is 8.5 dwelling units per acre. And it's interesting to know if you're testifying that 12 or 11 or 10 units per acre is what you need, why did you present a plan that had 8.5 dwelling units per acre to the zoning hearing board?
So the answer is, and as an attorney here, and I'll speak in spite of the fact that you're here as our trusted representative, but sometimes attorneys represent and present legal pathways for certain things that are not exactly aligned with the best business interest. And this was discussed, but it was our only pathway to creating value or recreating value that was once on the site. Business-wise, it absolutely contradicts the best business plan for this.
I have no further questions.
I have one, Mr. Nagel. Either you or the witness can answer it. Mr. Polinsky, you earlier had stated the definition of affordable means proposed units. Could you state that again for me so I understand where where JCM is coming from?
Mr. Herr, may I clarify before he answers that?
Yes, please.
So when the witness used the term, the units being affordable, I asked the question, do you mean affordable in terms of something that a person generally can afford? Or do you mean affordable in the sense of the definition of affordable housing, which is subsidized housing? So that's the context, and the witness can answer.
Correct, and I understand that, and we're not talking about affordable as in subsidized housing, but I would like to hear his definition of affordable.
Okay, I understand your question. Sorry.
No problem.
Affordable housing for us means market rate housing, which is based on that formula I had outlined, based on the average rent, based on the economic drivers of the location that the project would be built in. So based on the average income and all of those factors contributing to the asking price for the rental apartments.
Thank you.
When you're considering the affordable housing, now again, not subsidized, you're looking at 8.5 units versus 10, 12. Is that affecting the cost per unit then?
Certainly, that's what we would like to avoid. Certainly one can build even 2 units per acre and financially show a model that works, but the rents would be astronomical. And in order to stay within the realm of affordability to the definition that we just stated, it's very important that there are a little bit more economies of scale as a result of the work that we do to build buildings.
So therefore, it's not necessarily based upon the factors of the community. It's based upon the numbers of the units that are there and return on investment.
Certainly, so there are factors that are contributing factors, and the more units, the more flexibility we would have to charge a little bit of affordable rent.
Thank you.
Mr. Hanson?
Going back to the Exhibit A6, you presented this to us of that 196 units, X amount for 3-bedroom, X amount for 2-bedroom, X amount for 1-bedroom. How does the determination of the number of bedrooms apartment come into play with your return on investment?
I would answer that it comes into play in one way with our model and our return on investment. However, we factor in the ability to lease based on the amount of vacant units based on how many bedrooms. Meaning, if we were to look at the market and see an extremely high amount of vacant 1-bedroom apartments, we would, even though 1-bedroom apartments would potentially be a better dollar total for us on the financial model of the project, we would not build mostly 1-bedroom units. And so there are a bunch of factors that would have to contribute to that.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Mr. Nick?
Thank you.
Okay, the applicant will call Gwen Bear, please.
Sorry, what did you say?
Gwen Bear. Good evening.
Everybody hear me?
Yes, thank you. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Sure. My name's Gwen Bear, spelled B-A-E-R.
And for whom do you work?
I work for JCM Living.
And what is your position with JCM?
I'm the regional property manager.
And where is your office located?
I do have an office located in one of our properties on Windsor Court on Hayden Lane, which is one of our JCM properties.
And how long have you been employed by JCM?
I was employed October 2012.
And the title owner of the subject property, were you here during Mr. Polinsky's testimony this evening? Were you present in the room?
Yes, I'm sorry.
The title owner of the subject property that we're talking about this evening is Colebrook Associate Venture LLC. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the property for which you're the regional manager, the subject property, has been operated for JCM for how long, if you know?
I've been there 12 years, regional for 12 years.
And JCM has been managing it for longer than that? Is that fair?
JCM's been managing it since, I think, he said some 50 years, since they purchased it.
Since they purchased it.
1989.
Okay. And do you live locally?
I live in York. Over the bridge.
I'm sorry?
Over the bridge.
I'm going to show you an exhibit marked well, I'll call it A8, but it's actually a series of 3 exhibits marked A8A, A8B, and A8C. Could you just run through those and describe to the board what those show?
A8A is a overview of the Colebrook property, an aerial view that shows all the buildings and parking lots
And does that generally depict what you would see if you went out in the field at the property today?
yes. No more stone road there, yeah. The second one, E, is a picture of the property. I believe that one is as you're entering into the property. It would be some of the buildings on site. And C is another building that is on site.
And the last 2 that you identified, do they generally depict what you would see if you went out to the site today? Do you have an on-site manager at the Colebrook community?
We do. We have an on-site manager.
And does she live locally?
She does live locally, yes.
How many people does Colebrook employ with respect to the Colebrook facility?
Okay, we have 7 employees at Colebrook. That would consist of a property manager, an assistant manager, a leasing consultant, a maintenance supervisor, 2 maintenance techs, and a housekeeper.
And how many of those people live on site?
Okay, 2 of those do live on site, and I have an employee that works at another site that also lives at Colebrook.
And do all or most of those people live locally?
Yes. All the employees in the region live locally, yes.
Do you have a schedule or program by which you update the existing units in the Colebrook community?
Yes, of course, when someone moves out, they give us their 60 days notice. At that point, we start to prepare for their move out by contacting a contractor to come in and paint, to have the carpets redone, have it cleaned, whatever maintenance it does need to turn that apartment to have it ready for the next person, the next resident.
If you know, if Colebrook ultimately builds apartments on the 27-acre open piece of land that we've been talking about here this evening, will it be owned and managed in a similar manner as the existing Colebrook community?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Polinsky testified that there are 342 units in the community today. Can you tell the board what the unit mix is, please?
Sure. There's 195 1-bedrooms, 82 2-bedrooms, only 6 3-bedrooms.
What'd you say 2 was?
I'm sorry, 82 2-bedrooms,
Thank you.
6 3-bedrooms, and 59 studios efficiencies on that property.
Do you have through your company capital budget for ongoing improvements at Colebrook?
We do. We have a capital budget that we create every year on the requirements of the property, such as roofs, sidewalks, and such, and even upgrades. We are budgeted to upgrade an apartment month, meaning upgrade. We completely renovate it by making a brand new apartment. So far on that property, we have 149 units that are upgraded like a brand new home. Meaning new cabinets, new doors, new carpet, new drywall in some cases, new lighting, new everything. It's like walking into a brand new home. We do those capitals every year. I think the budget this year for capitals is over $500,000.
Do you have any programs in your leasing that make the units more prone to be able to be rented by regular everyday working people or to be more economically predictable?
Well, it's a rarity at Colebrook that 182 units do include all utilities. So that does make it very affordable. The property that is there right now, when you say all utilities, the heat and electric are included in those 182 units. The balance of the property is electric. I think that it makes it in itself very affordable when you can offer that to a prospect when they come in the door, if that's affordable housing in some aspects too.
I don't have any further questions for this witness.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
Ms. Bear, what is the current rent for a one-bedroom apartment?
A one-bedroom apartment is $1,400 right now, but it varies. There are different market rents on one bedrooms. Colebrook actually has about 17 different apartment styles when it's built. So we have one bedrooms that have dens, we have one bedrooms that are juniors, so they can vary in price anywhere from $1,300 to $1,500 a month. And again, that will include if it's utilities or electric. And then also if you do a premium apartment, which should be an upgrade, it's a little higher to do an upgraded apartment to move into like a brand new home. So right now rents at Colebrook are anywhere from an efficiency that would be $1,100 to maybe $1,600. It all depends what apartment that you choose and what finishes that you have on it. So we have, when you say affordable, one thing about Colebrook, because of the different styles, it is affordable that we have different sizes, different upgrades. So almost anybody can afford to live at Colebrook right now.
Okay. So back to my question. A one-bedroom apartment ranges between $1,300 and $1,500 a month. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. What is the range of rent for a two-bedroom apartment?
A two-bedroom would be $1,400 to $1,600, something like that.
Okay.
It really all depends on what is in the apartment, what the apartment style is. Again, we have 2-bedroom, 2-bath. We have 2-bedroom, 1-bath. It all depends what style you are picking and what finishing touches you have in the apartment.
Okay. And then moving on to a 3-bedroom apartment, what is the range of rents?
3 bedrooms, we hardly ever change those out. I would say a 3-bedroom at this point, I haven't had one for a very long time, would be anywhere from $1,800 to $2,000 probably.
Okay. And then you testified to efficiency apartments. Are those the same as your studio apartments?
That would be a studio apartment, that's correct. That would be anywhere from $1,000 to $1,100.
I'm sorry, 1,000 to 1,100?
1,200, yeah.
To 1,200. Okay, so the range is 1,000 to 1,200. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
I don't know, you didn't bring this up, but I'm going to mention this. Our delinquency at this property in 2012 was 99% collected. So we have an excellent delinquent program there. I mean, people pay. We hardly ever have to file. Our collections was 99% last year. So it's a well-maintained and managed property.
And do you currently have vacant apartments in Colebrook?
We do right now. Our occupancy right now is about 96 to 97%.
Okay. And within the past 5 years, can you estimate what the percentage of occupancy has been?
99 to 100%.
All right, I don't have any further questions.
Gentlemen, any questions of the witness? Mr. Kyle?
When was the last time the exterior property was remodeled? Has it been under current ownership?
Remodeled the exterior. We did replace all the doors in 2014, I believe. We replaced all the exterior doors, painted all the doors with our capital improvements. Again, you know, when you have a capital budget of $500,000, at that point, we assess the property every year at budget time. I think this year we're replacing quite a few roofs. We do concrete every year. We have a regular capital budget process where, you know, we replace roofs and doors as they're needed. But with a $500,000 capital budget every year, you know that we're constantly doing improvements.
But the exterior style has not changed at all since they were built.
The doors have, the doors have, and the colors have changed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Mr. Luce?
On top of the rent, so including utilities, are there any fees or anything like that?
No, we do not. And the pool is free, tennis courts, it's all free. We don't charge anything for any of that.
Mr. Hanson?
Is there a, for lack of a better term, a community building?
There is not one in Colebrook.
Any plans to put one in place?
We would love to have one.
Thank you.
Jason? Anyone in the audience or on Zoom? Saying none. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could we go off the record for a moment?
Sure can.
What
We off the record.
Thank you. Before I go to the next witness, would it be okay to take a restroom break?
No. That ain't enough. Yes. Please. We're off the record. Okay, if we could go back on the record, please. Notice that there is somebody on Zoom. John, if that is you, would you please let us know? Spot, I presume it is. Hey, Jason. Okay, Mr. Nagel.
Thank you, sir. The applicant next calls Dr. Timothy Cassidy. Good evening.
Evening. Trying to get used to the microphone.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes. Timothy J. Cassidy, and Cassidy is Cassidy.
I'm going to start out by asking you just to review your qualifications in your field for the members of the board. I'm going to.
No, before you're going to submit him, Mr. Cassidy, as an expert witness.
I do.
Okay. We'll go through.
We stipulate, since we seem to have a copy of it. Resume.
We can, but I do want to cover a little bit of that background just for informational purposes, but I'll try to get through as quickly as possible. But thank you. Do you have the can you identify the exhibit marked A9?
Yes, this is my CV.
And could you just start with your educational background, please?
Yes, I have an undergraduate degree in landscape architecture. I have a master of architecture, and I have a PhD in architecture, and in addition, a certificate in historic preservation as well. That's part of my graduate work in architecture.
And so your educational degrees are what exactly?
I have a BSLA, a Master of Architecture, and a PhD in architecture.
And have you done any teaching?
Yes, probably 6.5 years at Texas A&M.
What did you teach?
Architectural studios, design studios.
And you've done a lot of, and you said you're a planner.
I'm also a certified planner through the American Institute of Certified Planners. Although I don't have a degree in planning, I've been doing planning work since 1987. And so over the course of many years, through a lot of experience in standalone work, I was qualified to sit for the exam, and I took the AICP exam approximately 30 years ago. I can't remember the exact date, but I think I was about 30 years old.
And it's evident from your CV that you've done a lot of work with townships or other types of municipalities.
I have. I've provided a lot of design and consulting planning services for townships, for counties, for state of Pennsylvania, for state of Delaware. Pretty wide range of experience over my career.
And did that work include land planning?
Yes.
Did it include ordinance preparation?
Yes.
Did it include ordinance revisions and amendments?
Yes.
Did it include comp plan preparation?
Yes.
Do you have any specialized expertise in multifamily development?
I do. In my current position, I'm a principal at Bernardin, and I'm also the director of placemaking and urbanism. And I've been with the firm for 17 years, and we have the majority of our work, meaning the percentage of market share within our particular practice. The majority of our work is within the multifamily residential arena, and in my position, I am typically involved at the very conception of the projects, working with clients, doing a lot of background investigations into ordinances, regulations, planning documents, trying to understand what the parameters are that the project has to work within.
I would offer Dr. Cassidy as an expert in land use planning, architecture, preparation and revision of zoning ordinances, including compliance with the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code.
Is there any objection to his?
May I just ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Cassidy, have you ever testified in court before?
In court or in zoning?
In court.
In court, yes.
Okay. And in your testimony in court, have you ever been qualified as an expert?
Yes.
In what capacity?
As a planning consultant to West Whiteland Township in Chester County.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't have any objections to this one.
In West Whiteland University.
I do have a question. No. You asked that he be certified as an expert. Can you just repeat that, please? Like what you're he's being certified as an expert in?
Land use planning, architecture, preparation, revision of zoning ordinances, and of course, including in compliance with the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay.
Thank you. Dr. Cassidy, were you present tonight during the testimony of Mr. Polinsky and Ms. Baer?
Yes.
I'm just going to run through a few things just to confirm in terms of background. You're aware of the subject property that's before the application before the board this evening?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that that property is 63.3 or so acres?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the township's planning documents?
I am.
And are you familiar with the township's comp plan?
I am.
And is it fair to say that the subject property is located within the township's urban growth area?
It is.
Are you familiar with the improvements at the subject property?
Yes, I've visited the property a few times.
Are you familiar with A5, which Mr. Polinsky testified about as the early 1970s development plan?
Yes, that we reviewed that plan, in the course of, our preparation, of plan for the client, and applicant, when we were working on, various schemes for, the expansion that was discussed earlier.
Were you engaged by my client, the applicant, to make an analysis of East Hempfield Township's provision for multifamily dwellings in its planning documents and in its zoning ordinance?
Yes, I was, and so we reviewed the ordinance and we identified 4 districts where multifamily dwellings are a permitted use, and those are the RM district, the BR district, BC, and CBC. And should I name them formally? What's the districts and not just those 3?
Sure.
So that would be the RM district is actually the medium density residential zone. The VR is village residential zone. VC is village center zone, and CDC is the community business centers.
And can you tell the board what you looked at when you started your task of examining the documents I asked you about before?
Yeah, so we were trying to understand what the ordinance parameters were that we would have to work within in terms of density and area and bulk standards, such as building height, maximum building area, setbacks, and so we went through that, and what we found was that for the medium density residential zone, the village residential zone, and the village center zone, that the density was 5 dwelling units per acre for multifamily dwellings permitted, and that for the central business center zone that allowed 4 dwelling units per acre, and then we also reviewed the area and bulk regulations relative to maximum building height, and the maximum permitted building height is 35 feet, and there are some other varying restrictions in terms of the maximum building area that I think we can cover with some of the later exhibits that we've prepared.
Did you review the township's comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Did you review county planning documents?
I reviewed both the county's both counties places 2040 comprehensive plan, as well as the LIMC growing together. In LIMC is the Lancaster Intermunicipal Committee that consists of 13 municipalities in central Lancaster County.
I'm going to show you a document marked A13 for identification. It's okay if he hands the exhibits up while you're asking the questions.
What would you find as multifamily dwelling?
Multifamily dwellings. We were going to get to that in a second, but I believe I have a copy of the township's definition. Is that what you're asking?
I know what the township's definition is. Your definition.
Oh, my definition of multifamily dwelling would be multifamily dwelling as it is defined by the International Building Code.
Would you concur that a townhouse can be considered multifamily dwelling?
No. Single family attached.
Okay, you identify 4 zones in our current zoning ordinance where you can go out multifamily. What about a campus zone? Because it does list multifamily as a.
Well, if you would like, I can specifically go to that section.
Be section 290-3.11 5A 2.
Okay. Campus zone. This is section 270-3.11 of the East Hempfield Township zoning ordinance.
Right, if you go down to B5.
Well, if I may, I first started just reading from the top, and B is permitted uses.
Yep.
And when I then go to B1, it has agricultural uses, and it lists forestry and then horticultural operations.
I understand.
But then 2 says residential uses, and 2A says none.
Would you please go down to section 5, B5, A2, and tell me what that says?
That heading is campus accessory uses customarily incidental to the above campus uses, including but not limited to the following. And then it lists that's 5, and then 5A is residential uses accessory to a permitted campus use. And then 1 is dormitories, 2 is multifamily dwelling.
So there's actually 5 areas where you can build multifamily dwellings in the township.
Well, these are accessory uses.
Still a multifamily dwelling, correct? Whether it's an accessory to the campus, the principal of the campus use, you could build multifamily dwelling. It's simply yes or no.
I'll say that you can build them there. We did not include that in our analysis because the assumption is that these are accessory uses and they're only available to folks that are associated with the hospital, just like dormitories for a university or dormitories for some sort of religious order or something like that. But we didn't imagine that that these were multifamily dwellings that were available for the public.
Okay. When you look at zoning ordinances, according to your sheet here, A9, you've done a lot of work with different municipalities through the state of Pennsylvania. What is the common definition of high density?
Common definition of high density.
How many units?
I will say that it varies a lot from region to region, but that generally these days when we say something is starting to be high density, it is 25 acres and above. I mean, excuse me, 25 dwelling units per acre and above. And a lot of times it's multiples of that, but it's yes, it's usually something in that range.
To your knowledge, here in Lancaster County, do any of the townships have high density?
Many of them have what I would call medium density that is in the 12 dwelling units per acre range.
So medium density is considered 12 units per acre range?
Something in that range, 10, 12. It's because it has to, the density has to be high enough to justify that building typology. Otherwise, if you're talking about low density zone, then at that point you're really talking about a density that can easily be exhausted with using various forms of single-family homes, whether they be single-family attached or single-family detached, because you can easily achieve the maximum density with that building type.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go back and draw your attention to A13. Did you identify that?
1 second.
Certainly.
The one prior to that was A9. Will you have 10, 11, and 12?
I'll mark those now, and I'll ask the board to take judicial notice of those, because those are documents in general circulation that everybody's familiar with. A11 would be the East Hempfield Township zoning ordinance of 2014. Eight. And I'll ask the witness now about A10 and A12, so those are clarified, and then I'll proceed. Yeah.
I just want to try to keep records straight.
Sometimes I'll go out of order, but I'll always catch up. Mostly, usually.
It's easy for you to do.
I'll make sure I catch you up too. Could you identify A10, Dr. Cassidy?
Yes, this is a map. This is map 8 from the East Hempfield Township comprehensive plan, and this shows the urban growth area.
And are you also familiar with A11, the East Hempfield Township zoning ordinance of 2014?
Yes.
And would you agree that the zoning ordinance includes the 5 multifamily dwelling units per acre designation for multifamily that you've discussed earlier?
Yes.
And is that designation, I'm going to ask you to look at Exhibit A12 for identification.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
A12, can you identify what that is?
Yes, this is an excerpt from the zoning ordinance. It's section 270-3.6 medium density residential zone. And it appears to be 4 villages.
And is that the zoning for the subject property?
It is.
Now can I ask you to turn your attention to Exhibit A13? It's a big one.
Yes.
Can you identify that?
Yes, this is the LIMC growing together comprehensive intermunicipal comprehensive plan.
Could you give a little description of what the background of that growing together intermunicipal comprehensive plan is and who participated in it?
Well, I might have to consult the cover to list every single municipality that was involved. But there are 13 municipalities in the central Lancaster region, and they work together to form this group, and they all have similar, I would say, proximity to the city of Lancaster. And so they, I think they have some shared goals, objectives, and problems. So it made a lot of sense for them to try to work together. So that in April of 2007, the LIMC Regional Comprehensive Plan, growing together, a comprehensive plan for central Lancaster County, was adopted by the member municipalities, including Hempfield Township, as municipality, as a regional comprehensive plan.
Did growing together discuss or make any recommendations about the provision for multifamily dwellings and the density, the preferred density for those types of dwellings?
It does. So growing together makes a sort of general recommendation of gross densities of 6.5 to 12 multifamily dwelling units per acre, with the expectation that municipalities that are of a more urban nature and especially the portions of those municipalities that are located within the urban growth area and closer to the city of Lancaster would be at the higher end of that range.
And what would be at the lower end?
The lower end is, it cites 6.5 as a gross density, but they also cite that would be a net density minimum of 7.5 dwelling units per acre.
And does it recommend where that type of density would go within a township?
Yeah, those would be in the more outlying areas. That would be not in the, as we would say, kind of the main path of growth and where the greatest growth pressures are.
And so am I understanding correctly that you're saying Growing Greener recommended that each member municipality have an average gross density of 6.5 to 12 multifamily dwelling units per acre?
That's correct. And those recommendations are, they didn't just conjure those up. Those are based on all of the census data that the county comprehensive plan uses, that LIMC used, and that that East Hempfield Township also used. And those growth projections indicate that there is significant demand for additional housing. And not, when I say demand, I don't just mean like, you know, people want it, people need it. That there is going to be growth that continues in this region, and in order to meet those needs, all of the municipalities within this region are going to have to be able to increase their densities in order for that to occur. And just one other note on that is that, you know, one of the things that's, you know, Lancaster County is unique and it's beautiful, and it has great farm country and amazing agricultural soils that are recognized all over the world as being outstanding and very productive. And so there are a lot of efforts that have been made to try to preserve farmland and to be mindful about where development should and should not occur. And in order to do that, you can't just use up all of the land at the same density. If you want to save some of the land, you will have to have higher densities on the lands that are appropriate or appropriately located. And so there's it comes down to looking at infrastructure and water and sewer and roadways and, you know, access to services and, you know, all of these things. And so that's where that range comes from, is that we have to look at this in a thoughtful way.
Just one real quick, Mr. Cassidy, did you indicate which section of the comprehensive plan that 6.5 to 12.5 is?
That's on page 6, which is section 6.5.
Okay, thank you.
With respect to the recommendation that I'd asked you about, that you had testified about, of the gross density of 6.5 to 12 multifamily dwelling units per acre for each municipality, did East Hempfield Township adopt that recommendation in its zoning ordinance?
They did not.
What action did East Hempfield Township take?
Well, the East Hempfield Township developed its own comprehensive plan, and on page 3 of the East Hempfield Township plan, this is in the middle of the page. So be the second paragraph.
Dr. Cassie, excuse me for a second. Let me just mark that.
Oh yeah, sure.
So I'll show you a document marked A14 for identification. You can continue when you're ready.
Sure. So this is again, page 3, second paragraph, second sentence. In April of 2007, Growing Together, a comprehensive plan for Central Lancaster County was adopted by East Hempfield Township as the township's comprehensive plan. Growing Together is an intermunicipal comprehensive plan commissioned by the Lancaster Intermunicipal Committee, LIMC, and encompasses 11 municipalities in Central Lancaster. And that it started out at 13, but 2 dropped out. And Growing Together remains in effect as a multi-municipal comprehensive plan and is slated for review and possible update in 2016. However, the leaders of East Hempfield Township have chosen to create a more specific comprehensive plan, which will focus solely on this township.
Does the township's comprehensive plan, we're referring to the 2016 comprehensive plan, correct? Does it address future multifamily development in the township or the provision for rental housing?
It does. I would say that, but if you can just bear with me for a second here, my notes for a second. So on page 22, it says, demand for rental housing states, there will always be, this is quote, there will always be a demand for rental housing. And on page 24, in discussing housing goals and strategy, the township adopt a comprehensive plan states an intention to encourage sustainable and responsible rental housing to be owner occupied, and specifies as a strategy the establishment of a rental housing registry to monitor multifamily rentals and non-owner occupied rental housing. And there's also a reference on page 21 of the comprehensive plan that says that new developments will be smaller in scale and fill in areas between existing developments and on infill sites. So there wasn't a broad strategy outlined for how the township would really accommodate future multi-family housing that would be based on, census data and growth, but more the idea that there would be what I interpreted this to mean was that these would be small scale infill type projects that they envision within the districts that allow for this type of housing. And specifically those on page 6, also on page 63, there of the comp plan, there's strategy H 4.1 and H 4.3 that I was quoting earlier. So in case you're looking for those references.
Is it fair to say that that multifamily dwelling units are typically developed as rental units?
Typically, I mean, the exception to that is that if you have condominiums, so you can build a multifamily building, and then the form of ownership can be a condominium. But that's much less common in this market than in others.
If I can direct your attention back to A10, I think that was map 8, the urban growth area, is that right?
Yes.
How is that area identified? How is the urban growth area identified? What districts does that include? If you know.
Which zoning districts?
Yeah.
All 4 of the zoning districts that I mentioned earlier, which allow for multifamily residential as a permitted use, are located within the urban growth area, along with the residential low district, which does not. So there's not necessarily, it's the case where all of the districts that would allow for multifamily are within that, but it's not that, there's not a lot of other things also situated within that. There.
Did you said that one of the documents that you had reviewed in your review of all the various relevant planning documents that have been adopted, you reviewed the Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan.
That's correct. Place of 2040.
Does that plan address an urban growth area within the county?
It does.
I'm going to show you what's been marked A20 for identification. And again, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I'll catch up. And the cover is a letter from the county just identifying that document, correct?
That's correct.
And my first question about this document, Dr. Cassidy, is does the Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan Places 2040 address an urban growth area within the county?
It does.
And where is that area located?
I believe you have an exhibit that shows that.
Okay, we'll catch up and get to that.
But generally speaking, it surrounds the city of Lancaster and extends out the various highway corridors where most of the development, growth, and businesses are concentrated.
If I go back to the urban growth area under the township's comprehensive plan, are the densities allowed in, and you said all 4 of the zoning districts that you identified are in that urban growth area?
Correct.
Are the densities allowed for multifamily in those districts, those 4 districts that you mentioned, in the range of multifamily densities that are recommended by the Growing Together document that we talked about earlier?
Are we now talking about the LIMC?
Yeah.
Growing Together?
Yeah.
They are not.
I think that's probably the best place for me to stop for tonight, and we'll continue with Dr. Cassidy's testimony when next we reconvene. I think I said I would finish up around this range.
Did you mark this next one?
A20, yes.
I don't have a sticker.
Okay. Get one that has a sticker, yeah.
Right.
Why don't you give him that one?
Gotcha.
Is that one marked?
It is one. But I have a big red pen if somebody would like to borrow it.
Madam Solicitor, is the one that you have marked?
It is.
Would you mind if we gave that to the board, and then I'll send you?
Okay, but before we use the witness for tonight, see if there's any questions since it's all relevant at this period.
I would, Counselor.
Yeah, I prefer to reserve my questions until he's done with his
Well, then
direct.
And there'll be a transcript, so the solicitor will have a chance to look at those again, and we'll have time to refresh her recollection of what that testimony was.
Jason?
Did they take judicial notice of it?
No,
You said that.
Is your plan to order transcripts after each night of a hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Mr. Cassidy. 814 is the township count comprehensive plan. 820 is the growing together 2040. Yeah. 13 the LIMC. As far as I know, the LIMC no longer exists. So you're beginning.
It's my understanding that I thought that the organization did still exist, but I didn't know if there was active participation in that at this time or not.
Of the three plans we just talked about, as a specialist that you are, which one of the three do you feel holds the most valid?
Could you please be more specific, most valid relative to what?
Well, say I've never been on the zoning board, and I'm looking at these going, which one should I believe? Which one should I follow? Should I follow the township plan? Should I follow the county plan? Or should I follow the intermunicipal plan?
What I would say is that I think that that when we look at comprehensive plans, usually I don't think of them in terms of one having precedence over the other as much as looking for how they conform and disagree, and what the differences are, and where the common points are, and how they all work together. Because in theory, they should all have some kind of common view of what reality is and what's going on out there in the world, because they've all been prepared thoughtfully. I think that they all rely on the same statistical data, and they all recite it. So they're not, it's not like one of the plans is based on different information than the other plan. They're all the source data in terms of population growth is constant and is undisputed by any of them. So therefore, there would be a reasonable expectation that the response to how to manage that would have some commonality. And so when we start at the county level, the county, of course, is looking at all municipalities, and it's thinking about the county's total growth. So it's more of a big picture document, it's zoomed out a little bit, let's put it that way. But they also did a very, very, very extensive outreach. And that county comp plan, the preparation lasted, I believe, over 3 years. And it's very professionally done, and it's I think it's it's a very solid document. It's got a lot of good advice. It does not get into the same, a county comp plan like that. Typically, you would not expect it to get as fine grained as a township's comprehensive plan, because then at that point, the township's comprehensive plan is really the document that, while we would hope that it would be in agreement with the macro goals and recommendations that are in the county plan, that at the same time, it should be more specific and finer grained, because ultimately it should be informing zoning decisions and about how the township can make future decisions, even about like basic things like, you know, road infrastructure and, you know, things like that. It's all important, right? So at that point, that comprehensive plan, we would assume, would be getting, you know, again, finer grain, and would ultimately result in some recommendations that would be, they could then be put into practice by the township for other concerns.
Having just said that, do you think then that the township comprehensive plan would be better document, because the township is looking at the township itself instead of, and what is the county is, you know, the county as a whole?
Well, I wouldn't use the term better. I would characterize it as the expectation would be that the township plan should be more specific. That, you know, I'm not going to say that in terms of, you know, research, preparation, analysis, you know, et cetera. You know, better implies, in my mind, quality, in terms of document quality. In this case, I'm simply saying that the township's plan, we would expect, would be more specific in scale and how it would be looked at.
Okay, with that, I want to conclude for the evening, because council has to do what we will do.
May I just say one thing quickly for the record? I just, in looking through Exhibit A14, I just want to note, this is not a copy of the township comp plan in its original format. The maps have been doctored to locate this particular site. So I just want to make sure the record is clear. A14 is not the actual true copy of the comp plan. It's been modified.
And that's a fair point.
Okay.
And we're going to cover that.
And I don't know if the other plans have been modified yet or not, but I just noted on A14.
That's fair enough.
Okay.
Please note in the record then.
Okay, that if I may, because I'm the one that quote unquote doctored them. We put a circle. It's a dashed circle, generally around the location of where the Coldbrook site is located, because on the comprehensive plan maps, it's very difficult when you're looking at the little colored chiclets to be able to figure out exactly what has relevance to the site, because you can't find it.
We'll mark a clean copy as A14A for the next time.
Yeah.
So with that, let's just do a few administrative things. First of all, we'll take administrative notice of case 2445, which will be added to the record since it deals with this property. We'll admit into evidence so far applicants exhibit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
I think we should at least give council, I mean, it's probably best to wait to the end, but council for the township should at least have a chance to enter any objections if she has any.
Right. I would prefer we hold off on admitting exhibits until the end of the applicant's case. I only noted A14 just because if we were going to get into testimony that this was a true copy of the plan, it's not. So
Yes, that's acceptable.
okay.
So that,
At some point, I might ask to admit, I might offer exhibits for admission prior to the end of the case. And if I do, then we can deal with it at that time. But for now, I'm content. I haven't offered anything for admission. I've just marked some documents.
That's fine.
usually one marked or stated in the record. So So I'll rescind the administrative notice will add, but applicants' exhibits that I had stated will be held until we conclude. We will, conclude testimony for this evening. We will then, recess this case 2476 until April 18th at 7 o'clock. Jason, anything you want to add?
Nothing else.
Councilors, either one have anything
No.
you want to add?
Just to clarify, Mr. Chairman, you said April 18th, correct?
I think that's what it is.
It is a Thursday.
Okay, I'm just making sure I heard that correctly.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
18.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, so, with that, nothing else, Councilman?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay, we will, conclude testimony for this evening and recess the meeting until April 18th. Thanks everyone for being here. Take this up again.
Thanks for your time.
So, if you-